I've heard the discourse about celebrity coaches. Let me throw up quotations up. Celebrity coaches. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think the whole debate in general is tired. So let's put it to bed right now. Oh, yeah. It's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get your first deposit matched up to $100. We're all over the place on today's episode. We keep bouncing around, but we kind of stay within the SWAC West, just on multiple different fronts. We wrap up with Prairie View A&M, who is the SWAC West champions this year after knocking off Bama State. Prior to that, I have two definitive statements about Texas Southern University football at the present moment. And before any of that, I really want to attack a tired debate. I really want to attack a debate that I'm really exhausted on hearing. Over the weekend, I saw Ray Lewis's name. Yes, the phenomenal linebacker, the greatest linebacker of my generation. Ray Lewis's name was attached to Southern University and their head coaching vacancy on the football side, of course. And I get it. Then I saw the response to it, and I get it. But quite frankly, I'm tired. I'm tired of hearing this debate. I'm tired of hearing the discourse when the truth is it doesn't even really matter. More so than the debate, I'm tired of hearing the hate for it. I don't get the people who are so strongly opposed to the idea of it because I don't think that their quote unquote celebrity status, and I don't even like saying that, but the celebrity status should make the difference in whether or not you like the hire. Tell me why Deion Sanders, in that experience, weighs so significantly more than Eddie George in that experience. Because if we're going to be honest, when people express dissatisfaction, when they express displeasure, when it comes to Deion Sanders, they're talking about him as the person. So what makes his character so much more important than the character of Eddie George, who I see consistently praised for the things that he says, the understanding that he has? Why does that not matter? Because the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter if you are an all-time great. It doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer. It doesn't matter if you're a former NFL player or if you're a guy who stopped at JV in high school. I want to know, can you coach? That's the only thing that matters. And I understand why people get enamored with this celebrity status, this big name, because they think it's going to come in with more recruiting. And I would think, too, that if Ray Lewis was my coach, he likely would be able to pull in some phenomenal defensive players. But at the end of the day, if I'm looking at Ray Lewis, the JV player in high school, if I'm looking at Ray Lewis, the Hall of Famer, all-time great, one of the best at his position to ever play, the end of the conversation is, can you coach? Or do I believe that you can coach? Or do I believe that you can put together a staff great enough to coach for you? Do I believe that you can bring in a big enough name to recruit? The conversation and the debate is tiring because nobody really wants to have it with a genuine nature. Nobody ever wants to sit down. It's so polarizing that it's pick a side. How about you properly vet somebody? How about you properly vet their personality? You know, we start going into these conversations, and I feel like if we go and we look at each individual big name over the last 3-4 years, right? Let's just go in that landscape, because there was former players who coached at HBCUs prior to this. But let's just go here. If we're looking at Deion Sanders, we're looking at Eddie George, we're looking at Ed Reed, we're looking at Hugh Jackson. If we're just looking at those 4 players, I would argue that the way that their tenure has gone or has ended is not fully dependent on their on their personality, but your personality can kind of see how they behave. Deion Sanders was Deion Sanders before he came to Jackson State, and I would argue that he moved like Deion Sanders. Eddie George was Eddie George before that. This man was working on Broadway. Yeah, he seems like he would have a little bit more understanding because he went from football in the NFL to Broadway to doing business deals. He was already working with Tennessee State. It's different. You think it's much more of a surprise that he had understanding? He was already working with the university. You look at Ed Reed. I don't know that man personally. That one caught me off guard. I'm not going to lie to you. But I'm sure that in talking to him, you should have been able to see some things were a little bit impulsive. And quite frankly, I'm not certain that he wouldn't have been a good coach, but he didn't take care of business on the way to the season for me to even find out. When you look at Hugh Jackson, some of the things I saw him doing before he got this job at Grambling, he was popping fly stuff. I caught him on the pivot. I caught him on I Am Athlete. I saw him talking a little bit. Okay. Now I see him pulling out the cars on the field. Like certain ways that he moves, it makes sense. These people are just acting like their personalities. And if you vet them, I don't care where they come from. That's why this is so tiring, because nobody ever wants to move with any sort of fluidity. Nobody ever wants to try to see another side. It's just we hate how Deion left. And I'm not getting into that today. But we hate how Deion left, so we don't want nothing else. But the truth is, before he left, he won 2 championships. So if you can vet somebody and maybe try to get the success, see, people see what happened wrong at the end of Deion Sanders' tenure and say, we don't want no parts of that. I don't either. But I want everything else that came with it. I want everything else that came with Deion Sanders and Jackson State outside of the departure. And I feel like if I vet the person, I can do that. But because nobody wants to have that part of the conversation, I'm tired of having a conversation. I'm done with it. I think Ray Lewis would be a good coach. I think that he has the mind. I think that he has a personality. I don't know as far as motivating the kids. I think he has those things going for him. I don't even know if he wants to be a head coach. I don't know any of that. But because nobody wants to take a step back, because nobody wants to just have that conversation, I won't either. But y'all know where y'all can have it with me at South Exclusives on X, on Twitter, on the Blue app, on the Black app, whatever the heck you want to call it these days. At South Exclusive. That's me, Darian Gray. All right, now as we move forward, we have one coach who ain't here no more. And that's Coach Clarence McKinney. I can't sit here and tell you that I'm surprised, but then again, it's still rumors. So let's move with the rumors, with the reports, because this has came out before, but this needs to be the right call. And I'm going to tell you why as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode of Locked On HBCU is brought to you by LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is the #1 place for all of my business owners, because no more bringing people in to get an interview like, oh, your vibe ain't even right. You ain't even that person. You ain't got this, that, and the third. Just go to LinkedIn.com. It's more than just a sheet of paper. It's more than that. You have 800 million people who are on LinkedIn. Millions of people come every single day, every single week. So make sure that you can go in there and find the right person who is the right fit for your team, who has the right qualification, who has the right personality. That's what we just talked about with these coaches. Personality makes a big difference, not only on the football field, but then also in your place of business. So if you're a business owner, go to LinkedIn and find the person with all of those right qualifications for you. And it ain't even a cost to you. You can post your job for free. Use the purple hashtag hiring frame when you go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, and it is for free. No risk, all reward. All you have to do is go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege and find the right person for you. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, no matter when you're listening to me. Doesn't matter if you're listening to me at 3 a.m. Doesn't matter if you're listening to me at 3 p.m. If you finish with me, you can then go to the Locked On Sports today, and we have the first ever 24-hour podcast stream, just airing all of the different national shows, hearing from the local experts. So at any moment that you just feel like, I want to be more educated, I can go check out Locked On Sports today, 24/7, no breaks. Now, as you move forward, somebody who is going to take a little bit of a break I would say that, but at the same time, it still reports. It's Clarence McKinney. And I have two definitive statements about Texas Southern football at the present moment. And one has to do with McKinney. And with the report coming out that they do not intend to renew his contract, I'll move what was going to be the second part of my statement into the number one part of my statement, because this is the right call. I planned on coming in here and saying that Coach McKinney needs to go. I've seen enough. And I understand that people want to say, well, just give him one more year with Andrew Body. Well, Andrew Body ain't going to be here forever. This ain't the NFL. Body ain't going to be no Texas Southern Tiger for 20 years. Body is going to leave. And when he does leave, what has shown me that Coach McKinney can get it done? Matter of fact, what has shown me that Coach McKinney can get it done with Body? In a weak SWAC West, you got in there at the end of the year and you had one game. You need to beat Alabama A&M. You needed that one game to win, and you had it. Body gets hurt, and everything crumbles. Everything crumbles as soon as Body gets hurt. I don't care if he got hurt. It was late in that game. You're supposed to still win. You're supposed to still be able to make it to the SWAC championship. And if he did that, he'd have his job right now. But then let's get into the Body part of it, right? Andrew Body was there week one. TSU still crumbled against PV. All right, now we're going through this, and I'll be honest. If he had another year on his contract, then maybe I would let him try it out with Andrew Body, because I do believe you need a really good quarterback these days. So I'll give that to him. But with this contract being up for renewal, not him being fired, his contract was up for renewal. There was no more contract on the table for him. I wasn't going to put a new one there because I've seen him go winless. I've never seen him have a winning record. I've seen him crumble multiple times. And when I say him, I'm really just saying Texas Southern. But at a certain point, he has to be the person who takes all the responsibility. The quarterback and the head coach, those are the guys that take all of the responsibility. Has to. And if people want to tell me, well, the offensive coordinator is the one doing this, been there for 5 years. I know it's been the same problems, but it's the OC. I'm not scapegoating an offensive coordinator after being there for 5 years with 5 years worth of problems. At a certain point, the head coach has to take responsibility and say, hey, I'm the one who kept this guy around. He'll never say that. So more so, the head coach has to have accountability given to him by whoever's making these decisions, saying you kept this guy around. You have to be responsible for what he did. If you weren't happy with him and he's been doing this for years, you should have got rid of him. But your fate is now married to his. This is a disappointing season. This is a disappointing season, and I am not giving him a renewal. This is still reported. Last time it was reported, people weren't happy. Apparently, the players weren't happy. They went in there. We want Coach McKinney. And in the first half against UAPB, they played like they wanted Coach McKinney. They ran it up on the Golden Lions. And quite frankly, that's what you're supposed to do because everybody was doing it. But then in the second half, you start off with a 31-27 lead, and you lose 35-34. You allow UAPB to score 28 points in the second half when they haven't scored 28 points all year. In 30 minutes, you allowed them to score more points than they had scored in 60 minutes of any other game. That is a, let me calm down. That is a disappointment. That is the type of game where you come in with the intention of saving your coach's job, but I think losing the lead the way that they did to who they lost it to might have just been the final nail in the coffin. But I'll tell you who had another solid day, even though it wasn't perfect, and that was Ladarius Owens. Ladarius Owens is your SWAC Offensive Player of the Year. You can stop looking around. There's only one other person who it could be, and that's Jeremy Musa. And quite frankly, Musa was only going to get it because he was the quarterback of the best team in the conference. But when you have Ladarius Owens putting up the numbers that he is putting up, that ain't going to cut it. Right now, Owens is 1,370 yards, is third in the nation, not in the conference. When you compare him to his peers, he blows them away. 500 yards at least on the closest person. Ladarius Owens is by far the first team all-SWAC running back. There's no question about that. But he's top 15 in the nation in rushing touchdowns. He's third in the nation in rushing yards. He's doing things that are spectacular this year. That is SWAC Offensive Player of the Year worthy. At the point now where I don't know how you couldn't give it to him. I don't care about team success. Musa got that. But when you look at individualism, it's Ladarius Owens. That's who it's got to be. I don't even think this is biased because I don't sit around here and just be all on the TSU coattails. I keep it real. And at the end of the day, when you have somebody who's doing something and they're reaching others in the nation, and you have another guy who is up and down, I like Musa. I really do. But Musa has dealt with too many inconsistencies to get this simply because he's a quarterback of the best team. I'll tell you who deserves it. Coach Willie Simmons. He's the coach of the best team. Give him coach of the year. We'll look at that either next week or the week after. I don't know. I probably will wait until after the SWAC championship game to come on and say that. I don't think that they'll give the award out before. I have to check to see when they give out the awards. But I'm pretty sure it's after the SWAC championship game. I'm pretty sure it's in between the conference championship and then the Celebration Bowl. But that's what it needs. That's who it is, man. Give it to Ladarius Owens. I'm not doing this with y'all today, okay? I'm already upset. I'm already a little bit frustrated, right? Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, he's had 100 games in every single FCS against every single FCS opponent except for one. All right, shout out Graham for that. You know, I'll give y'all that. The only FCS opponent to hold Ladarius Owens under 100 yards. He's had over 130 yards against 6 teams this year. The guy has been extremely consistent. The guy has been balling. He's scoring touchdowns. He is the SWAC Offensive Player of the Year, and the more you try to deny it, the less I respect the opinion. I'm sorry. I'm feeling strongly about this. And really, I think that Jacob Williams has a case for the Defensive Player of the Year. And to bring it all the way full circle, I don't want to say I disrespect your opinion. I was speaking from the heart there. I was speaking from the heart, okay? But the thing is, Ladarius Owens should be the SWAC Offensive Player of the Year. Jacob Williams has a strong case for the SWAC Defensive Player of the Year. When you look at his numbers between tackles for a loss, sacks, he ranks high in all 3 of those categories. So he has a claim to that. You have both of those players, and look at what TSU did this year. TSU did that this year. And that right there is my final indictment on Coach McKinney, to bring it all the way full circle. Now, I get to go from talking about TSU's failures / successes and really the bittersweet, just how disappointing it is, to talking about my arch rival, Prairie View A&M, winning the SWAC West. If you don't envy this job, what could you envy? And I'll tell you why as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode of Locked On HBCU is brought to you by Prize Picks. Now, I love the Taco Tuesday, so that's today. We're going to have little special options there. They give one time, I think they just say, hey, $10. There you go. Put down a bet. If you win, you got it. If you don't, you ain't lose nothing. That's beautiful. Prize Picks is taking care of you. And I appreciate those who take care of me. So I'm going to take care of Prize Picks and tell every single one of you to go out there and make sure that you put your money down at Prize Picks. All you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players and pick the more or the less. Do you think they'll have more of whatever that stat is or less of it? So when we say daily fantasy sports made easy, it's made easy. It's made simple. All you have to do is go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. And when you do that, use the code LOCKEDONCollege and you'll get your first deposit matched up to $100. My friends and I are always discussing Prize Picks. I don't think a day has gone by in the last week and a half that we haven't talked about Prize Picks at least one time. So make sure that you now do it. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for your first deposit matched up to $100. As wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. I needed to string those 2 topics together, right? I guess 2.5, however you want to count it, kind of like 3, but I needed to string that celebrity coach topic together. I needed to string that Clarence McKinney needed to go. And I hope that is true, right? I don't hope he loses his job because I like him. I think he's a good guy. I've learned to like him. But coaching-wise, not enough success. But I need to string the celebrity coaches, Coach McKinney, Ladarius Owens. I need to put all that together because I needed my energy to be there and on the same level for all of that. And I was able to give that to you. Hopefully that you received that. Hope that you enjoyed it. This one is a little bit less emotional. This one ain't emotional at all. This is a lot less emotional. But this is Prairie View A&M winning the SWAC West. I really am not upset. Shout out to him. More power to him. Trayvon Conley came on the show. I think he's a good guy, right? So I'm happy for him. I think that Conley was right. He came on the show early. mean, before the season, this wasn't in the middle of any kind of stretch or anything like that. He came on the show early and said basically that his team was being disrespected. He came on this show early and said that where they have us placed in these SWAC West polls, nah, that's not anywhere close to where we are. And I didn't have a problem with where they were placed. You know, I probably would have placed them close there too. I wouldn't have placed them any higher than 4. I would have also have been wrong, you know, and they've shown it this year. And when you look at who they've lost to, when you really look at the games that they've lost, they haven't lost to anybody bad. They don't have a bad loss on their schedule. Grambling does. Alcorn does. The Southern, FAMU, I don't know. Southern's just look bad in general. But they don't have a bad loss. The way that PV lost to FAMU was bad. But they don't have a bad loss. They lost to Alcorn and FAMU. That's it. Neither one of those are bad losses. They just aren't. You know, so all in all, Conley was right. And Conley has looked good, even though this wasn't the game for Conley. Right? Like, this wasn't the game that Conley was going to go crazy. Excuse me. I'm sorry. But they knocked off Alabama State, and this, I didn't expect them to do it. Clearly, I've been one of those people who's just counting out PV every step of the way, and guess what? I'm counting them out again. But but I've been counting them out every step of the way, and I kind of dismissed them. I dismissed them before the season. I dismissed them in the middle of the season. And yet and still, I've been wrong, and I own up to that. Right? Because I was focused on Alcorn. I thought Alcorn was going to be the team, but then they ran into Ladarius Owens. But I thought that Alcorn was going to be the squad. Even going into this week, I thought Alcorn was going to knock off Jackson State. That was kind of a toss-up for me. But I thought that Alabama State was going to beat PV. So I thought at the worst, we were going to look at Grambling playing in the Bayou Classic for it. But none of that happened. None of that happened because PV dominated Alabama State when they needed to on the ground. And that was the first drive of the third quarter. Alabama State did not touch the ball until there was 6 minutes left in the third quarter. That was absolutely dominating. And that was the moment in which I realized, oh, this is PV's game to lose. This was the moment where I realized, okay, PV really got a handle on this game. PV struck first. They scored a touchdown. Then nobody scored. And the majority of the scoring was in the third and fourth quarter. Could it end up being 21-14? And only 7 points were scored in the first quarter. After that, nothing was scored until the second half. But when you have a 9-minute drive on a defense like Alabama State, that takes the wind out of your sails. And all it took from there was a 54-yard touchdown pass after that to put the game completely out of reach. But you have a 9-minute drive methodically moving down the field. You don't even let this offense get on the field, right? You got to commend them for that. You have to. And Damon Stewart had a good day for the Hornets, but it didn't matter because it didn't translate into any points. One person who didn't have a good day was a single running back on Alabama State. 16 yards in the game. That's tough. 16 rushing yards. You know, and I'm pretty sure that the sack yardage goes into that and everything as well. But still, for Prairie View to be able to dominate on the ground in the way that they did, for them to run on Alabama State the way that they did, for them to be able to stop Alabama State from running the way that they did, that's why they won this game. This is why they are champions now. And I'll be interested to see how it goes against FAMU. I didn't want to see this game again. I didn't. This game didn't excite me. I really wasn't super excited for it the first time. But after FAMU beat them so badly, it was like I verbally said, I don't want to see this game again. I want to see something new. I probably would have liked to see the Alcorn versus FAMU game because it was so new. And maybe that kind of contributed to why I was counting out PV in the way that I did. But this game's got to be better. And I'll rewatch this first matchup between the Panthers and the Rattlers some point in the next 2 weeks. I don't know. I'll rewatch it and I'll check it out. But at least the first 3 quarters, because I think it got out of hand, like really in the fourth. But I'll check it out because that's going to be our SWAC championship game. And I don't know how I feel about it clearly, but I do know that that is what we are getting. And on Friday, what we're getting is a preview of the Bayou Classic. I will not be back until Friday. I'll drop a couple of clips here and there on Twitter. Probably drop one today, and then I'll probably drop 1 or 2 I'll drop them as we go on. I'll try to drop at least 2, maybe 3 clips on social media as we move forward. So on Friday, we'll be back though. I'll be gone Wednesday and Thursday. Friday, we'll be back with our game of the week discussing the Bayou Classic, Southern versus Grambling. What's on the line? It ain't the SWAC West. We'll get into that on Friday's episode. In the meantime, in between time, it's going to be a little longer until we hear each other, family. But take care. Stay blessed. Peace.